Caption close editor's note. The flames began, witnesses said, in or around an artificial palm tree in a downstairs lounge of a Boston nightclub full of an estimated 1,000 people. It took less than 2 minutes for flames and heat to roar upstairs. Some patrons of the one-story Cocoanut Grove nightclub managed to make their way to the roof and jump to the street, landing on top of parked cars, according to Associated Press coverage of the fire that blazed late on November 28, 1942, but many died as fleeing patrons jammed a single revolving door. Other escape doors were locked or swung inward, making them useless against a wall of people. The result was what still stands today as the nation's deadliest nightclub fire, a disaster that killed 492 people and led to stricter enforcement of fire codes and to innovations in the treatment of burn victims. The AP was on the scene almost immediately. One of the reporters, Harry C. Glasheen, embedded himself in the rescue crews and helped carry some of the dead from the building. Below is a version of his first-person account from that harrowing night 75 years ago. ____Boston. My hands are trembling all over this typewriter keyboard as the reaction sets into a night of almost indescribable horror. I covered the Cocoanut Grove fire, which was one of the worst conflagrations in this nation's history, and certainly the worst nightclub fire. I can still hear the screams of the dying. I still can recall the stories of the living torches running wildly about trying to get away from the swift-reaching flames and suffocating smoke. I can still see those 30 or more bodies huddled on the floor of a garage, transformed into a morgue, some of them so horribly burned it will be difficult, if ever, to identify them positively. For more than 36 hours I have been on duty. I was ordered to the scene within minutes after the fire was reported as a 4-alarm blaze. Leaving a taxi not far from the fire, I fought my way down narrow Piedmont Street right to the main entrance of the club. It was impossible to get through the entrance immediately because firemen and volunteers were coming out of the building in a staggering stream with the dead and dying. At first there was a shortage of stretchers and it was necessary to use overcoats to carry out the victims. 2 firemen were lying on the floor inside a window, putting a line of water on the fire so that it could be cooled sufficiently to remove the trapped persons. Finally the smoke and fire subsided long enough to allow a fireman to chop down the windowsill and we began the task of removal. I have leaned over into the building to grasp bodies dragged to the window by firemen. These were hoisted through the window and onto waiting stretchers. One Catholic priest asked me to notify him of any of the living. Of the 20 or more which I helped take out at this point, I saw signs of life only in 2, one a man and one a woman. A Navy man was standing beside me with an armful of blankets to cover the bodies. We covered one, a man who looked to be dead, and as the blanket was pulled up over his face he shouted, "Don't smother me." The body of a woman appeared to move slightly and then she moaned as we placed her on the stretcher.